The Renaissance was known for the advancement of many things, but the cornerstone on which the period stands was the transfer of focus from God to the individual and the development of individualist themes within an array of disciplines at this time, including literature and art. The abandonment of medieval beliefs began in the late 1300s and transitioned all the way through the 1600s. It was a period in which self-repression, as taught by the Church, was challenged by self-expression as taught by secular ideas. Up until this time, the European Church was the dominant power both influentially and financially. The Church had the luxury of filtering all information through Church doctrine, and since the clergy were considered to be the elite class, the masses were informed and controlled through this powerful group of intellectuals. The masses, for the most part, were only given supernatural formulas for the natural phenomena that surrounded them, and this system of misinformation kept the Church's strong hold. The Church, up until this time, had maintained that capitalist gains and money lending were to be considered improper institutions. However, the members of society who were of Jewish descent were not obligated to observe this idea, and so commerce and industry still thrived. In time, the Church's ideas about capitalism broadened, and it was no longer viewed negatively as a way to make a living as it had once been in the Dark Ages. So industry and trade flourished in Italy during this time as the ideas about mercantilism shifted and a new class was born. For the first time, there was a middle class, the bourgeoisie, which was mainly comprised of merchants, bankers, and the like. It was quite literally businessmen, which helped bring a voluminous change in ideals inside the budding middle class. Venice, which was considered the gate to the east, prospered heavily from the reopening of trade with the Orient, and once the Italians all but monopolized trade in the Mediterranean, there was no stopping the flow of information and goods coming in from around the world. For the first time, we began to see the gentleman scholar and learned bourgeoisie regarded as equal to the clergy and royalty. Florence is regarded as the original birthplace of the Renaissance, due mainly in part to the Medici family. Early thinkers and writers helped plant seeds of individual ideas by moving away from traditional church doctrine. Petrarch is considered to be the father of humanism. He was one of the first literaries to refer to the Dark Ages in the beginning of the Renaissance. Humanism brought with it a central theme of the individual accomplishment and focus, which is exactly what the spirit of individualism and the Renaissance was beginning to permeate as. Petrarch's poetry is a neutral ground in which the author expressed personal grief and documented the fights within himself, which represent his own moral dilemmas. In his work, Sectrum Meum, he points out that secular achievements didn't necessarily preclude an authentic relationship with God. Petrarch argued instead that God had given humans their vast intellectual and creative potential to be used to their fullest. He inspired humanist philosophy, which led to the intellectual flowering of the Renaissance. He saw no conflict between realizing humanity's potential and having religious faith. Leon Battista Alberti was an Italian philosopher, author, architect, artist, poet, linguist, and Renaissance humanist polemist. Alberti is largely cited as the model of a Renaissance universal man. He believed that mathematics was a cornerstone to both art and science. In his Della Pittura, or On Painting, he states he considers the mathematical aspect of a work before anything else. Not long after Petrarch, there was Leonardo Bruni, who is regarded as being the first modern historian. He was a Florentine humanist historian who was the first individual to write utilizing a three-part view of history. His most famous work was broken down into three parts titled Antiquity, Middle Ages, and Modern. His viewpoint from which his works are written are regarded as extremely secular, even though it was probably not Bruni's original intent. Bruni's tripartite conception is derived from Petrarch, who was the first to give the title Tenebrae, or darkness, to the Middle Ages. As mentioned earlier, rich patrons from the banking industry helped pave the way for artists and authors. Cosimo de' Medici loved discussing humanist issues, and through his generosity allowed scholars and artists to flourish. He founded the Medici Library and Plato Academy. He engaged court painters and the New Artist Academy in the development of a collection of images depicting Medici power. Florence's wealth and success was guided by rich patrons like the Medici and the artists they supported. This became a new model for society in Europe. Several other factors contributed to the spreading of individualistic ideas in the Renaissance art world. The widespread use and availability of oil paint came about, which brought with it a more relaxing way to paint due to the extended drying time of the substance. For the first time we began to see the easel and canvas painting, and the medium no longer relies on architecture and becomes much more portable, encouraging individualism within the artwork. Another important contributing factor was the Protestant movement, which was a result of Martin Luther and his 94 Theses. This was a huge shot in the arm towards the papacy. It all but broke entirely loose the church's hold on the masses. With the church reeling from the bad press caused by the selling of indulgences, the church had no choice in backing down in power.